There was this man. One time there was two bankers getting on a bus. No. There was this guy exposed for the first time to a thermos bottle. And later he commented to several people about how enthralled he was with the intelligence of this hunk of plastic. He went on several times about this, and finally somebody said, well, what's the big deal? He said, what I can't think, he says, you don't plug it into anything, it's just that there's no batteries, no nothing. He said, how does that thing know to keep hot stuff hot and cold stuff cold? And can anybody perceive that a revolutionist can't be any less sharp than a thermos jug? You have got to keep what you can think hot, hot, and you've got to keep anything that you think otherwise, otherwise. In a sense, you can say that you are having to keep separate that which you know is hot from confusing it with that which would be cold in relationship, what life has installed in everyone in the forms of belief. I didn't go through the story just to leave it there, the joke, because it has much more promise than that. If you won't do it, I'll go ahead and do it. Think about the punchline of the little joke about the guy saying, how in the world is this thing? Got no software, no computer behind it. It's not even electric. It seems to be just a passive something. And the guy just looks at it and holds it and turns it around and opens it up. How does this thing know the difference? If you put in hot stuff, some way it knows to keep it hot, and if you put in cold drinks, it knows to keep it cold. Now, there's more to it than just going ha ha. How does it? Of course, technically, you people could run at it even from city consciousness and say, well, whatever goes in there, all it does is keep it like it is. And I could go, well, not bad. Except, like I said, I knew you'd miss it because you think, well, that's the obvious part. That's the real answer. And you must intend something more elusive, emblematic, or metaphorical. And I say, how do you know? Is that not impressive enough that something that seems to be a passive container can keep that which is in one state that way and not confuse it? Can you do it? Can ordinary intelligence do it? If you look at what passes for the intellectual process at the ordinary level in the city, that you hand somebody a piece of information, you give them something, can they keep it in the way in which you gave it? Now, we're not commenting judgmentally on how good it was that you gave them. Let's just say you gave it to them and it was hot. You gave them something that was at 98 degrees. Does the human organism, the part that passes for the thinking aspect, can it, in the same way that a dumb, non-software driven, passive piece of plastic thermos jug, can keep hot things hot and cold things cold? The answer, of course, is no. And the answer, partly, part of the reason for the answer in the city is that if things were passed from intelligence to intelligence, if things were passed about from man to man, and they did not change, you would not have energy conversion. If there was some way in which to make a qualitative judgment about one piece of stuff, all right, information, and to say that this piece of information is needs to be very strictly enforced as to its definition at the time it's given. And if it could be moved, to simplify it, all of that equates to 98 degrees. Then once that is passed from one person to another, it needs to stay at 98 degrees. You do see by now, without even being a physicist or remembering much of your undergraduate days, that does not equate with energy conversion, and especially the way in which I have tried to stretch your perception of it. Even though you do not have such an animal as a full conversion of energy, if things do not change, up or down, sideways, front to back, then there is no energy conversion at all. Thus, the thermos bottle is a small work of art. It can do, from one view, that which very sophisticated, very educated, intelligent so-called people in the city cannot do. There is a combining, and it amounts to, in little instances, if we're talking about one exchange of one person handing to another person this piece of information, that's 98 degrees, let's say, in temperature. When it is handed from one person to another, when the energy moves from one person to another, it begins to, in science they keep wanting to refer to it as the winding down of the universe of entropy. But I don't get too many of you dragged or feeling like you're being dragged into a corner having to do with physics, and maybe you think you don't have enough background. So don't get entangled for a second. The idea of entropy, that everything is going to run down, cannot be, of course, proven, because we'd have to have the last person still alive here to say, I knew it, or to shout out, because everybody else would have had to run down. You couldn't have two people. If you had enough energy to keep two people alive, then this theory of the ultimate entropy is not proven. So one of the two have got to drop, that he's run down. Now you got to have just this one person left, and the rest of the universe is about to take its final breath. You understand? It's about to go. And he's got to be the last one, and with his last second of consciousness, he must look, and of course even then we're splitting hairs in favor of the theory, because then he's got to say, it's true. Of course then you're left with this, who's he saying it to? So the thing is, entropy cannot be proven unless that happened. The significance, the reason I went through that, is that it's taking place in human affairs, but you've got to be able to think in absolute what appears to be opposites, because it does not, of course, happen, just like I'm describing, or all human affairs would stop. But in a sense, it does happen, because it is energy being converted, and it's operating on this basis that even physics and cosmologists keep suspecting and theorizing about. It is as though between almost all human reactions, just a general theorem I can give you is, and you can see it yourself if you can hear what I'm describing, it's as though every little exchange of hello, how are you? You looking good? You get a haircut? You get your nose fixed? How's your new job? It's as though here you are trying to pour it out into this guy's thermos. Let's say you're talking to somebody else, and you're trying to pour it out, and it's as though this information going from you to this other guy's thermos or his cup, it's as though that piece of information, that little liquid you're going to pour, it's as though that thing suddenly takes on a life of itself and wants to say, I'm going to get as cold as I can, as quick as I can. I'm going to find the most common denominator, and cold, of course, doesn't really cover it, either hot or cold, but it's like I'm going to find the most common denominator, the basis, the crudest interplay between these two people, and I'm going to hit there real quick. While the guy's pouring, while one person's talking to the other and saying, don't you have a new hairdo, dear? As fast as I can. The way it comes out, since apparently not a lot of you are hearing it, it normally comes out through this description afterwards, and by critics, psychologists, saying there is a great deal of misinformation going on between people, a great deal of misunderstanding, because there's one person. If this guy was a clinical psychologist and studying people there in one of these made-up rooms and they're behind the glass, he'd say, notice that man went up to his wife and says, dear, do you have a new hairdo? She says, what's wrong with it? And then he could go on, well, some of you now hear what I was pointing at, But then the psychologist could start saying, now notice, all he did was ask a question. We don't really know whether he was criticizing her new hairdo. He says, don't you have one? And she acted in a defensive manner, and she immediately says, oh, you don't like it. And then he says, oh, I like it. And so he tried to make up for it because he didn't realize she was going to do that. And then notice what she did. She went, no, you don't. Now you're lying. And so the guy could talk to his students and the undergraduates and say, notice how this happens, and notice why psychology is important. We need to make people's perception of what they're saying to each other and blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you something else. It is that people cannot even operate like a thermos bottle. What they're calling misinformation is energy conversion. All right, if you still don't hear it, how about this? I'll put it in a real... From an ordinary view, if you're ordinary people, does this sound like life to you? Now just listen. Let me go back to that scene. The guy comes in, sees his wife, his girlfriend, he says, oh, you have a new hairdo. And she says, yes. Can you make a movie out of that? Can you even make that a fitting scene in a movie? Just a couple of seconds out of a 90-minute movie? No, not really. That's just dead space. If somebody was a real critic or someone who was in the script business, they would say, well, whoever wrote that does not move the plot along whatsoever. What was the point of him coming in and saying, oh, dear, you have a new hairdo, don't you? And she says, yes. And the script writer, a script doctor, the director could say, what is the point of that little interplay? It does not move the storyline along. It serves no purpose. I mean, you're just killing time. We could just have them stand there and let some music play. You don't have to have them do that, right? Now, I could have gone on with that for those of you who don't see it. And then she could say, do you like my hairdo? My new hairdo? And he'll say, yes, I do. Then maybe he pours himself a glass of water and he says, are you glad that I like your new hairdo? She says, I find it's agreeable with me. Then she gets up and goes in another room. She comes back to me and she says, are you hungry? And he says, no. She says, okay. And she goes out of the room. She comes, do you hear me? The reason I went through that is what would appear to be direct pouring from one cup to another, from one thermos to another. Information. People talking. Now we apparently have very good communication. No mistakes going on. Did I make it clear enough? She says, are you hungry? And he says, no, I'm not. She says, you understood I asked if you were hungry. He says, I understood. Did you understand? I said, no. Did you think you misunderstood me? She says, no, but I wanted to be sure that you understood that I asked you if you were hungry. And you said no. He said, that's right. Is that a movie? Is that life? If you were ordinary people and you were observing that kind of people operating that way just verbally, right now we just worry about verbally, would you think that these people are my kind of guys? Would you want to be at a party with them? Would you want to emulate them? If somebody said, now this is a better way to live because these people are communicating, and they're communicating in a very straightforward way, and there is no miscommunication going on. Would you go, if you're an ordinary person, go, now that you point out, yes. Well, I want to take this down and make a tape of that because I want to show my wife so that we can live like that. The point is, in the city, you people are, of course, laughing, and part of it is, we will assume you're getting little glimpses, but ordinary people in the city would just say, what would they say? All right, dull. Jesus, bland. Anything but what? Those people are nothing. That's no life. But the reason I brought it up, do you see, from the view of ordinary people, not just psychologists, but ordinary people, continually say we misunderstand each other. My wife misunderstands me. My children misunderstand things I say to them. And then, of course, later they say that I misunderstood what they were trying to tell me. There's no misunderstanding. If on the basis of what they call misunderstanding, if that was corrected, you would have entropy going on between the people. The relationships would be breaking up. Energy would not being passed, continue to be being passed and converted under those conditions with those people. They cannot do what a thermos can do, and nor should they. But I wanted to point out for everyone who still thinks that even back at city level that you were a pretty hot shit before I met you. You had the IQ less, just a little bit less. You know, you can get a quart thermos nowadays, an all plastic one. I see them $7, $8. It can do what you cannot do. And even if you could do it, you have to be retrained every day, and it doesn't. All right, besides that, the other part I threw in to tie a little bit to the night before last is also the thermos to carry that autonomy a little bit further. Not only knows to keep the hot hot and the cold cold, then implicit in that description is, of course, it does not confuse the two within certain limits. It does not take hot and say, well, I'll just make it a little cold. It tries, and within certain limits succeeds in keeping it as hot for a while, more or less, as it was when it went in. Its information has not changed. The energy has not changed appreciably. When you're dealing with the ordinary intellect, no matter what people say, they have a commingling between, to separate the two for the sake of us talking, which ultimately is not as specious as it may sound. But at the ordinary level, back at the city, understand, for those of you on tape that I never draw much anymore, but the human nervous system, the spine, this being man's brain itself, the upper end of the nervous system, and my old revolutionary idea of here we have the city, with everything going on in there, city consciousness, and that being equal to what I refer to as city consciousness, that level, ordinary level of intelligence, and then up here is whatever would be the revolutionary bushes, that wild and woolly area. You have in the city, under ordinary conditions, no matter what they say, as I started to point out for you again, you have the functions that can be referred to as the ability to think, my yellow circuits, the high end of the nervous system, but you also have going on there that which I was calling, not inequitably, believing. The two operate as evil twins. They commingle, they change places, but it's the commingling that should be of interest to you. It's why I brought up some weeks back as my little holiday gift to give you a new definition of what new intelligence, or real intelligence, revolutionary intelligence, is to be able to think without believing. And I let that go, if you recall, for a week or so. Anybody that wanted to chew on the verbal description of it, that it was not, as you should see now, I was not inferring that you think without having some kind of faith in what you think, which you could have heard it that way, that you think something but you don't really believe what you think. That's not it. It's if you're going to think, think, damn it. If you're going to believe, believe, damn it. But don't do them both at once. Even a thermos is smarter than that. For $8, we could replace your brain. Plus, the Aladdin and the Coleman company now merged, or one bought the other, so just about any thermos you get is guaranteed for life. $7, and they'll guarantee it forever. To do what it was supposed to do. To keep the hot hot and the cold cold. You don't even have to tell it. You don't have to open it up and say, all right, watch out down there, and we'll send down some hot stuff. So that's hot, hot, not cold, so don't keep it cold, keep it hot. What people call thinking in the city, all the way from the Einsteins to the Dantes, I I guess I picked a fair example. Dante, there he is, considered to be a poet, certainly had a way with words even after it's been translated from a foreign tongue into English. If you enjoy the king's tongue being kicked about and twisted and tormented and watered, the man's a jewel. But what's he writing about? He's writing about beliefs, writing about apparent spiritual feelings. And then even Einstein, what do they keep remembering about him now that he's gone? Now, I'm not holding up either one of these as any kind of hero for you unless you need a hero. And if you need a hero, you deserve a hero. But Einstein, they keep remembering these things of him saying that he cannot believe that God plays dice with the universe or something like that. All of you should know that. That's remembered probably or quoted as much as the E equals equation of him commenting out of all of his life, commenting somewhere using the word God. So you've got both extremes. It appears to be somebody, well, I don't know whether you see that or whether it's all that interesting to you. You have going on in the city when people apparently are dealing with intellectual matters, they cannot simply deal with intellectual matters. They cannot do it. And they do not see any distinction. Oh, you can point it out. And they'll say, yeah, just like you would. Yeah. And then I could say, all right, do you trust me? Will you try something? You can say, yeah. And I say, all right, don't confuse, don't mix up believing with thinking. And you go, all right, I won't. Well, for those of you who gave me a hearty laugh, I guess I don't have to think of an example for you, but it cannot be done with ordinary intelligence. When you're operating at the level that life produces everybody, you have this continuum. That's why me calling it circuits. And the times I have drawn out diagrams and pointed out of like my red circuits, what appears to be the more physical and motor functions of man, and then my blue circuits appears to be the so-called emotions, and the yellow circuits of the intellectual activities. And I point out that they're all intertwined. It operates in the 3D world time-wise as though you progressed in that direction, just like humanity has. That each child apparently grows through that stage, but that's only a 3D view. That's not true. But it's true enough at the 3D level to make it a valid map for the time being. But remember, once you understand the map, you throw it away. You don't walk around looking at a map the rest of your life instead of the sights. And once you begin to see yourself, then you got the original. And as Kyrou pointed out, if you got the original, dump the copies. Once you see anything, if you got a copy, you got it from me. You don't need it anymore if you see it. There is an interlocked that runs in ways that can be drawn three-dimensionally that belies the fact that you can talk about one function as opposed to the other. But here in the 3D world we can, of course. There is no way that ordinary intelligence, an ordinary man, can think pristinely. For him to even believe that he's thinking, watch it, he's got to have some basis that apparently has been installed in him, that he seems to be, the more intellectually inclined he is, that he seems to be involved in a constant checking and a feedback mechanism within his own mind. Am I thinking? Am I staying logical? On what basis does he have that? It's on the basis that he believes that he has learned how to do that. But belief, I'm still fairly sure, since nobody has called my hand, that I got a general recollection of the definition from the dictionary. It is relying on something, being convinced of something without absolute proof. That's belief, which is all right in the city. But to commingle that and to say that you know something, somebody has dropped you and they cracked the inner lining of your thermos. And now you can't even do blah, 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 what the 798 thermos can do. They can be kept separate. In the city they can't. Now you can't deal, again, you've got a prime example of the ultimate waste of time, everything that you are now, all the baggage you brought into this, there's no way to go back and unmingle it. It cannot be done. If it could be done, it'd be the world's greatest waste of time. You'd be dead. You'd still be trying to unmingle it. There was no reason that you mingled it. Nobody made you mingle it. There's been no particular harm done to you in the mingling of it. But if you go any further, you got to stop now. You got to realize it. You got to realize that in the city, all information, all knowledge is some kind of commingling. That's why they use believe and think synonymously. They believe they're the same thing. I have twice in the last several months, once I told a little story and then I referred to it again, and it never got much of a reaction, which of course, being the dauntless person I am, it won't stop me. The story, do you recall, that I made up, guy crawling through the desert, dehydration, was almost finished, rolls over one sand dune, and there is a guy with a little stand selling water for sale. And the guy, almost dying, says, "How much is it?" And the guy with the stand says, "Does it matter?" First time I told it, got almost nothing. The second time I referred to it in another context, nothing. And of course, now you laugh, since I said the dauntless person, that you knew I was going to bring up something that hadn't worked before, you thought. So now you laugh. The story is not merely to point out to simple people, to point out to city consciousness, that under those conditions, that the person would pay any price. No. Jesus, that's Play-Doh. Not Plato, Play-Doh. That's for kindergarten kids. And you're hard up for something to do, and so you do it in your pants and then sit down and just kind of slide around in it. That's not the story. The story is not intended, so anybody would see that. So if you can go back now, some of you don't have to take it personally, but you might at least surmise that the reason that it didn't get much reaction the first time was it just seemed so blatant. That, well, yeah, that's not, you can't hardly laugh at that. If somebody was dying and they were dumb enough to ask the price, the guy gave them the right answer, like, does it matter? That the guy's going to pay any price or promise anything. So you figure that out. No. Let me tell you why I made up the story. Now we're getting somewhere. Let me tell you the revolutionary intent of the story. The kind of revolutionary information that you can take out of it. It's to show that all prices in all circumstances are irrelevant to what a revolutionist needs. All prices, under all circumstances. It is as though, drag in something else from a few days back, it is as though there is no more connection between the price and what's needed than I was suggesting to you there might be between action and thinking of action. It's irrelevant. It's not the continuing process going on within yourself of passing energy back and forth in the partnership. It's not you asking yourself, oh, well, this is what happens, but I'm saying that this is not the point, and you can't continue this way. It is not going on that you're asking yourself, well, if I try so-and-so, you don't use these words, of course, but this is what's going on. You're asking, what's the price? You know, how much effort is it going to take for me to be able to stop doing so and so? Or the kind of things that I hear him suggesting, if I actually tried that, how would that interfere with my present sex life, my present social agenda, my dreams of doing this or that? And it seems as though it is something that one must what? The big P word, ponder. It is not any question about, is the price worth it? Is the price too high? Is it a bargain? It's that the price is irrelevant. And there's no stronger word unless I'm going to say damn irrelevant, because irrelevant doesn't begin to cover it. There is simply no connection. All right, try it another way. Now, of course, this is not true in the city. Ordinary intelligence believes otherwise, believes. But let me ask you people, get outside the belief mode for a second. Have you ever done anything in your life that had a price? I don't care what it was, effort, but mainly a good price you can think about. Money you had to go pay to Mrs. T&A's aerobics class. Have you ever done anything at the city level that you paid a price for that had any effect? We're not talking to people at the city level. I'm talking to you people now. Have you ever done anything, but especially something that cost? Let's say, because money is the easy way to talk about here for a second, that you went and you paid somebody. Maybe you paid thousands and thousands of dollars to finish school. Now, I'm not saying you didn't get a diploma, but as far as there being a real effect on your life that you could tell that, all right, I've done this, or that you went to that spa and you did for a while drop 10 pounds. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but insofar as it was something that really shifted your life, that changed your intelligence, is there anything, and forget right now how much it costs, let's just say it cost you something. Have you ever had anything that was worthwhile that you paid a price for? Insofar as this, if you're hearing what I'm saying, the answer is simply no. It's not pessimism. There's nothing wrong. Everything you've ever bought in life, it wasn't that you got cheated. It was just like you ran it through a thermos and didn't understand what was going on, that you paid some price, and what did you get back? Nothing. But it wasn't too hot and it wasn't too cold. And so nobody notices that it changed who you were. The answer is no. I thought I was going to help some of you. All right, I'll try it even simpler. And this is real simple, and it's real correct. There's nothing that you can buy, pay any price for it, that's worth a shit. There's nothing that you can pay a price for that has any value to a revolutionist. None. And of course, I know you're going to eat, you're going to have a car, and you can have a hobby and all that. But anything that there is a price on, that anything that's got a price, is not worth anything. Now, it's worth the price. The money just keeps shifting hands. Somebody wins this hand, then somebody wins a hand, you take a break. But the card game goes on. The game goes on forever. You can't leave the room until you die, sort of. The money doesn't leave the room, it just changes around. Well, what I'm saying is there are no bargains. There is no value to it. Do you hear me? It's not spiritual. It's not any sort of bad-mouthing of material goods or the material world. It's not that. At the city level, there is nothing that has a price that you can buy that a revolutionist needs, that will help a revolutionist, that will increase your intelligence. Nothing. It's just simply nothing. And people can't recognize it. And so people ponder the price. How much is it? It doesn't matter how much it is. If you want it, especially if you got some idea what you're doing, and everybody got to have some kind of hobby. You know I'm not trying to stop your hobbies. Go out and we all waste money on something, if you want to look at it as wasting money. But insofar as, well, what's the price, because I don't know what I want to pay it, that's irrelevant. You operate on the basis, well, this may have some importance, because we're not talking about now me just buying a new tape or a new CD or a new little hat to wear around. This, if I had to go, if I take up and take this course, if I contribute money to this cause, to this group, if I do something that's outside the bounds of just mere hobbies and knickknacks and trinkets, what I want to know is this really going to be worthwhile? And there's nothing to think about. No, it's not going to be worthwhile. That's the real humor of the joke that nobody could laugh at, is when the guy says, how much is it? And that guy says, does it matter? It's not that you're going to pay any price you want to because you're dying of thirst, you son of a bitch, and so you'll pay anything I ask. That's for children to laugh at. The real joke is, does it matter? That is, it doesn't matter. You could be walking by here, you could be riding by here in a limo, and inside carrying hundreds of gallons of water, a fully stocked bar. You could have geisha girls in there hosing you down in the limo, and you could pull up and suddenly stop and back up and roll down your window and say, how much is your water? And the answer is still the same. Does it matter? Because the answer is nope. Doesn't matter whether it's $1, $1,000, $100, and of course it seems to matter to the players in the game in the city about how much it's going to cost me money-wise. But insofar as does it matter, that is, if you have this or don't have this, now we're not, of course, talking about keeping the body alive at that level. But on the basis that if I have this or don't have this, does it matter? There's nothing to think about. The answer is no. Doesn't matter at all. Therefore, the price is irrelevant. There is no connection between the price and what a revolutionist needs. Irrelevant. That's the joke. Except in the city you can't see it. And even if I could make somebody see it for a second, they'd go, that ain't funny. You got to turn the tape over. There is a little heart to this that's so subtly sweet that I got to stay here for a couple more minutes because some of you need to see this. It is just so right in your face. There is no correlation. You've got to be able to remember, think in three different directions at once. There's no correlation, and I'm not just talking about shekels and yen and dollars and rubles. Not that. But you can take that and think about it simultaneously. But there is no correlation whatsoever in the revolutionary sense between the price of anything and your need. It's irrelevant. I keep saying that, don't I? There is no correlation. But now look at what seems to be the hobby of all kinds of self-improvement. What seems to have been the operational mode of many of you people that stumbled upon this, or vice versa. Now you stumbled on this. I didn't stumble on you. Now look where I'm going. Part of the hobby of people believing that they're helping themselves, trying to help themselves, trying to find something to make them more intelligent, trying to help their belief systems. What is a large part of that hobby? Wondering, well, what's the price? And what are you going to charge me in money, assuming that you are in contact with UFOs and you're going to introduce me to one? What's it going to cost? I'm talking about right up front. You tell me the cost. All the way from that to, all right, what's the other cost? You know, do I have to move in your damn old commune community and I have to, kiss your ring every day? Do I have to cut off my hair and have your profile tattooed on my top of my skull? What's the price? What's the price? Then I'll decide. To do this, there is no price. It's what's weird. So part of the hobby's gone. Part of the place that you want to first step is gone. Well, there's got to be a price. What am I going to have to give up? What if I got a change that I'm not going to like? See, that's the price that I'm not going to like. And the real answer is, does it matter? Then you think, well, that's, if you're ordinary now and just stumbled upon a apparent revolutionary camp of some kind, and you say, well, what's it going to cost? You know, what's the price I'm not going to like? And the guy says, well, does that matter? And you think, well, yeah, it matters. But if you had any potential to belong there, then you have to think, well, no, it doesn't matter. Not on the basis that I'm starving to death or I'm dying of thirst and I'll pay any price. Remember, that's the children's version. To go, ha, 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 ha. Because you're not dying. You can get by without this. This is the part that I told you is so subtly sweet. You can get by without it. You don't need it. You're not dying of thirst. You're not going to die if you don't complete this or go any further with it. And so the question about, well, wait a minute. I've really benefited from this, but I'm beginning to get the idea that I'm going to have to do so-and-so. I'm going to have to give up some habit I have, or I'm going to have to give up some way that I operate. I'm going to have to give up some of my daydreams. Wait a minute, I should take a step back and really think, is it worth the price? You hadn't stepped back. You just stepped back in the city. You're just back there. Because there's no price to pay. It's not any question whatsoever about, well, what am I going to have to give up to do this? Nothing. Giving up won't help anything. There's no price to pay. Because even if you do not use such terms any longer, you're still trying to strike deals with who you consider to be the guy running the game. Even if you don't say the big G word anymore. You think, well, I'm going to deal with life that, all right, if I quit smoking, will I get more intelligent? Will I become more conscious? What if I quit trying to screw everybody in town, everybody I ever met? Since all religions seem to be down on that. What if I became monkish in my sexual behavior? And what you're saying is, all right, God, or life, would you then let me get a good view of something if I gave up that? Now, are you asking God and life or me? Now, if you're asking me, I'm going to tell you the answer is no. You can stay there and get a hobby. You don't belong here. But to strike deals with God, with life, that, all right, if I do so-and-so, then will I get more intelligent? And you can believe, because life is full of this, you can believe that, yes, I will. I can believe that there's no doubt. I just got to persevere with paying the price. Whereas the real answer is, as far as price is, does it matter? And the answer is no, it does not matter, because there's no price to pay. There's no price that you can perceive. There's nothing that you can pull out of your background, out of your back pocket, to sit down at a new table in the same room, but a table going on just around the visual spectrum. The rest of the players can't see it, but there's another poker game going on in that same room, right here in the universe, and you can't see it. And they go over there, and you reach in your pockets, and it's just table stakes like everywhere else. And you realize, you look down, I can describe it several ways, and once you begin to see, you look down, and what they got on the table, you don't even recognize. I don't mean it's just funny looking bills that may be printed in Italy in somebody's backyard. I mean what they're playing with, you can't even recognize. You don't even know what the hell it is. In other words, if they say, are you in the game, you look in all your pockets, and you ain't got nothing that even looks close to that. So there you are. Then, back to the question of the joke. What's the price to get in this game? The answer is, does it matter? Because you ain't got it. There's nothing you can take from one game to the other. There's nothing you can take from one table to another. There's nothing you can take from the city up there and say, all right, I got some of this, and I'll spread it around. I'll give it, who's in charge of this camp? I'll give you some of what I got. Or, indeed, I brought some of this stuff with me, and I'll give it up. Some of my habits. I'll give it up, but then with you guys out here, will you promise I'll become one of you? And they'd be saying, in essence, they'd be saying, so you don't know what the price is? And you'd say, yeah. And their answer would be, of course, they wouldn't say this verbally, but their answer would be, does it matter? And you would think, if they did do that, you would think, oh, so you're saying that you think that I want this so bad that I'll give you everything I got. Yeah. No, what they're saying doesn't matter because you can't pay a price. You ain't got anything to bring to the table. You got nothing to give up. If we were the gods, and you say, all right, if I come up here and I stay with this camp, and I stay in this activity, if I quit drinking and smoking and run around my wife, will you guys make me more conscious? That's what you're asking. That's what all religion's asking. Let me ask you this. You got to be this intelligent by now on a warm night. If there were such gods or such people, then you could go to them and say, all right, if I give up smoking and drinking and fooling around my wife, and you got the ability to make me more conscious, if I do that, will you? Is your belief that these people in some way are going to think, that is such a great deal, how can we refuse? That it will mean so much to them for you to quit smoking and drinking and screwing around that the gods or anybody could help you would go, oh, well, I guess we got to. You know, what a deal, what a price you're paying, that will mean so much. What's their benefit? What are they getting out of that? Where is the energy transfer? You say, well, I'm giving up all these nasty habits. And they'd be like the guy at the water stand saying, so? well, the price is I'm giving up these nasty habits. That's the price I'm willing to pay. And the people would be going, and? You know, what's that to me? You call them nasty habits. I mean, this is helping us? That's the kind of God you and everybody else in the city and your forefathers have been fucking around with all your life. Your belief is, well, I'll go and pray. I'll agree that on Fridays I won't eat. On Tuesdays I'll only eat half as much. 1 month a year I won't eat anything. I'll light a whole bunch of candles. I'll pay the place so much a year just to reserve my seat here so they can do what? All of that. What you're saying is I'm going to pay some price, and I hope you're taking notice of it. And the belief, this is not thinking, but the belief is that there's some kind of force somewhere that goes, well, he got our number. Anybody give up drinking? Anybody give up looking at Playboy with one hand? Anybody would pay 10% of their money to the church, to the temple. Well, what can we do? Give him what he wants. Now, of course, as always, all of this back inside of your own nervous system. This whole universe that operates on its own level in your universe. That is the kind of conversation going on between the more simple and the more complex aspects of your own nervous system. The partnership itself. Trying to strike deals. Well, if I just have one more drink tonight, I know I said I'm going to have him, but if I have one more for the road, can I do that? And then, all right, I'll do that, and I won't drink anything else until next Saturday. Next Saturday, I'll go ahead tonight instead of, I normally have a few drinks every night. But all right, and I know I've had too much tonight. I had more than I intended to, but let me have one more for the road. You've all been through this. Just take your own example down to be drinking. If I do that, blah, blah, blah. You're discussing the price of something that's useless. The answer is, does it matter? That is, the question was, what's the price? The price for me to have another drink tonight is that I won't have one for 2 weeks. Is that a deal? And if you had any intelligence in your partnership, if you had an intelligent partner, one that was properly more complex, his response would be, what's the difference? You're saying, the price is me giving it up. Will you accept this price? I won't drink for 2 weeks if I can have one more tonight. To what avail? What kind of price is that? What does that mean to me? Now, of course, all that's in you. So the question should be, the proper question is, what is that to you? It's a hobby. From a revolutionist sense, it's a useless hobby. It's not going anywhere. In a sense, instead of you playing poker at a big table, it's like you're sitting there playing solitaire and passing off his poker, and you win a hand and you take it from your right pocket and you put it in your left. Then you lose a hand, you take it from your left, you put it back in your right. But the great example, the one I used to like, that I'd point out to some of you people, is having health as a hobby it's such fun to get, of course, non-fatally ill periodically, because it's so much fun to get well again. I'm making progress. Really? In life? Yeah, because I had a terrible head cold. Well, you should have seen me. My nose is running, but now I'm over it. And people are just act like, well, they're just proud as punch. Not just to feel better, but they won't tell you how bad they felt. And this is not funny, really. And it's certainly, of course, no critique of life, but it's the whole prospect of, well, I felt bad, and I'm making progress because now I felt good. That's progress. If you had any time memory, if you had any 4D consciousness with a continuing awareness of time as the backdrop to all this in the city, you'd realize that's not progress. Just like it's supposed to be. You're pouring it from here into there, here into there, here into there. Back and forth. I lose 10 pounds, I gain 10 pounds. I lose 8 pounds, I gain 8 pounds. I quit drinking, I take up smoking. I quit smoking, I start snorting cocaine. I quit doing that, and I become a fanatic and drive everybody crazy preaching against drugs. Everywhere I run so far that I look around, I keep thinking there's a shadow over my shoulder. You know what I begin to think? It's me. And right behind me where I am, no matter where I go. That's, of course, if an ordinary person in the city had that kind of intelligence. Now, with somebody, if I ever bring up the story again, will you try next time and properly laugh? The guy says, how much is the water? And the guy says, does it matter? He doesn't say, does it matter? And he doesn't say, does it matter? He says, does it matter? That's funny. Because no matter what the question referred to, water, salvation, self-improvement, better looks, more money, fill in the blank. He says, what's the cost? Now forget the setup of the joke that it's water. Just here's the joke. I got it down to its bare minimum. Bertrand Russell would be proud of me. I've taken the sentence down to its atomic level. Now the joke is this. How much does it cost? This is an entire joke now. I got a joke for you. Got a joke for you. Set up and the punchline. That's it. Here's the joke, starting from the beginning. What's it cost? Does it matter? That's the joke. The rest of that was just trying to get your attention months ago about the water and the guy, got to have something to drink. The real joke is, what's the price? Punchline, get ready. You'll love it. Punchline is, does it matter? Somewhere in all of that is many of the things about not talking to yourself, not telling yourself what you're doing. I know it feels like, and at times it sounds like, that I'm talking in that way, and some of the methods of me trying to point out that you've got to operate in a certain way which is going to belie you still expending energy back in ways in which you've been doing it, not because it was wrong, not because it was unethical, not because it was morally reprehensible, but simply because you won't have the energy to do that. It'll be going somewhere else. Well then, all that, the confines of all that, once you begin to get a glimpse of this, is why it is so subtly sweet and almost so impossible to talk about, because it's not a matter that, well, I'm really giving up a lot. To do this correctly, I'm going to have to tell you the truth. It's just us. Don't let that tape ever get away from you people now. You don't really give up anything. See, that was a joke again. You've missed the punchline again. You don't really give up much of anything. All right, I'll make it sound a little bit better, give you a little room. You don't really give up much of anything. If I would do it, damn, this would be easy. And I would have told you something when I first met you, wouldn't I? I said, all right. And I'd find out what some of your habits are. And that's all right, you got to stop that, you got to stop that. And a few other demands. You got to give me half of everything you ever make. And you got to draw me up in your will. You go, yeah. The truth is, those of you just never heard me put it this way, but there's enough of you to not laugh at this, is you don't really give up much of anything. And the things that you apparently, if somebody said, if some observer thought or said, well, wait a minute, I used to know you back so-and-so. If anybody would waste their time doing this, anybody that hard up for a hobby. And so you have changed a little bit. And you might go, well, yeah, all right. But your feeling is, well, it's like I would never even thought to have brought it up for them to say, boy, what a price you've paid. What price? It's just almost nothing. It's not. I'll do it one more time before I leave this joke. It's not of saying, well, this has been so meaningful in my life. I don't care the things I've given up. The beautiful habit of drinking, taking dope, and whatever else. You know. God, I love that. It had such a strangle on me. And I know that many people in the ordinary world believe that that kind of getting them through the night will get them through their lives. I have something much greater, something much dearer, and all that. That's not it. It's just you didn't really give up just much of anything. There's not much of a price. There's nowhere to pay the price. There's nowhere to take the stakes and the money that everybody's having to play with at the level at which you're born. There's nowhere to take that stuff and to trade it in. That's why some of you laugh without knowing. That's why the childishness, at least from out here, of trying to pray to gods and strike deals with them. All right, I'll give up so-and-so. Not just, all right, I'll give up my son. I'll sacrifice my son if you'll let me live. I'll quit fornicating if you'll get me that raise. Now, is it a deal? Is it a deal? I'll attend services. I'll go to temple without fail for 2 years if you get me that promotion. Is it a deal? Huh? What the hell is that? That's all right in the city, but what have you got? If there were gods, if there were these Jehovahs and Allahs, these great things outside the system, looking down, and you're going in here in the system, the thing that it made, according to their stories, it made you and everything you got your hands on, and you pull out some of this stuff and you want to hold it out and say, all right, if I give you this, if I give you 10% of all this stuff, and him thinking 10% of all the stuff I made, he goes, yeah. Or if I give up this one bad habit, you mean the bad habit that I gave you? Yeah. If I give this up and give it back to you, will you give me something great? He goes, I guess that's when these great gods decided to take a piss on the planet and drown everybody. Or if I give up this one bad habit, you mean the bad habit that I gave you? Yeah. If I give this up and give it back to you, will you give me something great? He goes, I guess that's when these great gods decided to take a piss on the planet and drown everybody. You don't come into the game with anything to trade in. All right, now forget all those stories. It's internally, you don't come into being you. You're not born being you with anything in reserve. You don't have anything to trade into yourself. Forget the gods out here now, and that old idea. You got nothing to trade into you. To go and stand in front of a mirror, to stand there and talk to the salesman at the spa, and look at the mirror simultaneously and think, all right, if I do this, and I do drop a few pounds, what's going to happen to my sex life? Will that increase my chances of getting promoted at work? All of that is neither here nor there, of course, regarding this. But you need to see that you don't have anything. You're not born. Nobody is with anything to trade in on anything else, even with yourself. That's why those hobbies can keep you involved for 70 years, because they're not going anywhere. They're not going to drive you out in the bushes, or if you stagger around out in the bushes, they're not going to keep you there. It has no value. Anything you apparently get, that, yeah, I lost 10 pounds. Are you more intelligent? Well, I feel a lot better. Don't get smart with me. I feel better. Well, I'm fine. Why did you feel better? Has that got anything to do with this? Well, it might. I mean, if I feel better and have a better self-image, I feel better about myself, I might be able to press forward with this. There's your press forward. You got nothing to trade in. If we were engaged in this conversation, me and this fictitious person, now you don't have to worry about somebody playing the God part just on the basis that you think that somebody knows something. And you say, all right, if I come and do so-and-so, and plus, don't laugh at me losing weight because I feel better, and now I'll probably be able to listen to these ideas of yours better because if I have a better image of myself and a better feel about myself, I'm more inclined to work on myself. Isn't that true? They ask me. The answer's still no. It seems all right. But you didn't come into this game. You do not wander out in the bushes. You do not get up in your own nervous system up in places that are not even activated. That in the 3D world, life has not, across any wide spectrum whatsoever, sparked people. You do not go up there with something in your hand or in your back pocket and say, hey, I like this. I like the smell of it. I like the sensation. Who do I pay? What's the price? The answer from way off, that this thing that hangs around the far reaches of the universe that nobody can see, it says, does it matter? Because you ain't got the price. Can't you see you don't bring anything with you that you can trade in? Who are you going to trade it into? You already laughed at gods. You going to trade it into me? You going to trade it into yourself? All right. Okay, self. If I'll quit drinking, then will you make me more intelligent? And the answer at the city level seems to be, assuming that you got some idea of wanting to be more intelligent, whatever that means to you in the city. And you say, will you? And you seem to say, it's kind of far off and the waves are crashing, there's a lot of solar flares, there's a little static, but your general impression is that you said, probably. Because everybody else believes that, so you figure, well, I will too, I'll pay you off like that. You think, good, maybe I'll try it. I just wanted to know, because maybe I'll try to pay that price. Remind me, give me 2 or 3 minutes at the end if I start running out of tape. How much time we got? Well, let's jump to this. I can tie this into something tonight. People believe all over the world, throughout history, all over the world, as normally seems to come about through their religions, that when people die, that they get closer, for better or for worse, but they get closer then to the source. Right? Some form of a day of judgment. Someday, you're going back to the gods. You're going back closer, for better or worse. But you're going back closer, maybe into the actual presence of the fount of life and existence, the gods themselves, right? Everybody, all over the city, everybody believes that believes anything, if they believe that you don't die when you die. It's in the human nervous system, by and large. But you believe that you get closer to the source. Now, what if that is backwards? Why is it then, since everyone says they believe that when you die you get closer to the source, why is it then that nobody wants to die? It's not a joke. What if it's backwards? And that's the very reason that life installs in people and makes them say, I believe that when you die, then blah, 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 whatever this was, some kind of contest, some kind of test, some kind of curse. But once you die here on this planet, in this mortal life, once you die, then you end up closer to the presence, the source of it all. If it's backwards, then that first part makes sense in light of the fact that nobody wants to die. What if the human system knows that ordinarily that when you die, it may be, as far as 3D consciousness and awareness and verbiage can go, that dying takes you even further from the source? Would that not explain to 3D intelligence why that people simultaneously throughout history and throughout the world just almost by exception, forget the few atheists and all that stuff, that people say, I believe that when you die, you return. Many times they put it that way, but you get closer to the source than you are now, obviously, right? So if that's true, then why does everybody will just hold on tooth and nail and pray and try to strike deals with the gods? Don't take me, don't take me. Why? There's one easy explanation that no one has ever considered. They look at this as being over at some level, and then when you die, for better or worse, but when you die, then in some way it's an improvement. What if this is running downhill? And ordinary people, once they die on this level, they even fall further away from the source. Now, the reason I said I was going to bring it up tonight, and I could tie it in a little bit, was what I was mentioning about what should be, from a revolutionist view, a real understanding of the future. The future is change. If you can't change, if there is no growing complexity in you, you've got no future. Now, when I said the possibility of dying and even going further away from the source, did not mean that was the only possibility. What if, again, I might suggest to you that that could be part of what this is about. Not for some reason that you're trying to do it specifically. But if you are not capable of change, if everything is going to be for you as it is now, you've got no future. And what if having no future is what I am just sort of suggesting verbally to you, the ordinary condition of people dying, and as opposed to getting closer to the source or returning to the source, they fall further away from it. It's downhill, not uphill. Can you see that in a sense you could look at death, as it appears to be at the 3D level, as being the eternal sameness, which is, by my definition, the description I've just tried to give you, not just my definition for you to see it, eternal sameness is equal to no future. Because if you are not capable of executing change, if you are not in the process of becoming more complex, you got no future. Can you see that at the 3D level that is the same thing as saying or describing death? The great, eternal, unchanging. The sameness. And of course, as some of you would say, or at least Calvary would, thank God this has absolutely no pertinence to being alive now. Do you feel at the ordinary level? Could you say that you feel that as you have grown older in life, that you in some way, whatever you apparently would want to call it or believe it is, but do you feel that in some way you're getting closer to the source, closer to the heat, closer to some great reality, closer to that noise that you may have suspected that you've heard coming from somewhere out in the universe, or just offshore in the dark, that heavy breathing and thrashing about? Are you getting any closer at the ordinary level? Why is it people dread growing old? Not just dying. It's like they're drifting further and further away from something. They don't know what, or they call it their youth. The nervous system itself knows when things are running along nicely and when they're not. Either that or you might as well commit suicide, because you're going to die before you get out the door probably. Stab yourself in the eye with your finger and drive it into your brain or something. But beyond that very physical level, the nervous system itself knows that it's running downhill. Now, I could say it can know if it's running otherwise, except in the city. That's almost impossible, because it doesn't do that. It's only out here doing this kind of thing that you can actually feel, I'm not dying. Now, physically, I'm running down. The time that they measure out here and the time on this planet, there's no doubt that I'm older now than I was last year. But only you know, if you could know this, I may be running downhill externally, but I ain't even the same dude I was last year. I'm a lot better off. Of course, you wouldn't say that to anybody, and you wouldn't even say that to yourself, but that's part of my job, is to say this kind of stuff for you that's despicably crude, and a real revolutionist would never say it. It's just I'm protected, and I have this policy, and I can say this kind of shit, well, mainly because I don't believe it, so I can say it. I know it. No, I don't believe it, though. But for you to know, and your nervous system can know it. That's why everybody else is always uncertain. There's no conclusion in the city. That people have to have themselves validated. That people have to say, their nervous system has to say, how do I look? How do I look now I lost weight? Now that I had my face done? Now I finished school? Now I got that promotion? Now I got a new Mercedes red convertible? What do you think? Huh? Because their nervous system knows that it's dying. It knows that in a sense it is dead because it's the eternal sameness. That there is no future. And so everybody in the city, it's like being back at a poker table, and they all keep trading cards. Cards, not cards. How am I doing? How am I doing? The person over here says, you look a lot better. God, you're a great guy now. You're a lot better off. And a few minutes later, that person says, huh? How about me? And then you go blah, 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 blah. And nobody's any better off. They're not supposed to be. But nobody's any better off. All you did was change cards. You changed money. He handed you a 10, you handed him back 2 5s. The nervous system knows it's dying. The nervous system knows it is not growing. It knows it is not evolving. That's part of being an adult. That's part of getting to that age and kind of feeling like, It's like you went up to a certain point. And it was a long 40 or 50 years just, and the nervous system knows it. The only ones that do not, or that have any alternative of knowing otherwise, are those that know otherwise. Those that can reverse the process, that are not run in that direction. Oh, parts of you are. You know by now I'm not talking about being immortal in the 3D world. Because everybody's going to die, me and you and everybody's going to drop dead and rot. And that's it. At this level. But the nervous system knows in a sense that it is dead long before they step you in the box. And that's why it must keep talking, it must keep posing, looking in the mirror, checking. The nervous system knows. And it cannot know otherwise because it doesn't happen in the city. Things run in that direction. But to do this, you can feel otherwise. You can know. Nobody else knows. You don't have to ask anybody. And you don't have to tell anybody. You wouldn't tell anybody. There's nothing to talk about, but only you know that, hey, all around me, I'm like a seed in the middle of a orange that's been picked and it's rotting. The tree's still healthy. The grow's healthy, but this one orange is rotting, and yet right here in the middle of it, I'm not. And only you know it. Now the thing is finally going to rot, and you're going to rot with it. That is, you're going to die, but your nervous system did not decay. It was not livingly dead, or part of the living dead, for 50 years. Assuming you're involved with this for 50 years. It can, you understand all this can operate simultaneously. That is, that you can die and not die. You already know all that by now. That things can apparently be running uphill and downhill. That food that your stomach took in can look at it as, woo, here it is, we are in the inferno. Dante was right if asparagus has, Renaissance Italian poetry that they read. They fall into there and they go, this is it, in the 7th circle. We're here in the great river of death. And yet, the rest of you, the larger body goes, now I'll go out and run, I'll lift some weights, I feel much better. And so one level of things seem to be dying and falling apart, and at the same time, part of that same organism that you can identify, such as a human and his digestive system, is benefiting from it. Now, of course, the same thing is going on in the life of life itself. That individual bundles of molecules can apparently be dying, regressing, while simultaneously they're part of something growing. So what I was trying to infer to you was that even though you're going to die at that level, you can be going in a non-dying direction. Oh, all right. Some of you should be able to get something out of that at some later date. Not just that last line I left, but even the setup that I gave you. That life is already built in. It's not some devilish trick, but it's built into everyone's nervous system. It gets into humans, and it comes out in words of believing that when they die, it'll be a move upward. That they'll get closer to the source of life. Whatever it's called, whatever their nervous system calls it. That I will be closer to the source. And yet they cannot, dealing with belief instead of knowing how to think in a sense, they cannot in any way begin to put that together with the fact of, well, why is it not just me personally, but everybody? So it's obviously instilled, again, at the cellular level in life, that I'm surrounded by people that say they believe the same as I do, that when we die, all of us good people here in this group, when we die, we're going to get closer to the source. Boy, what a relief. Well, why is it none of us want to die? Are we all just chicken shit? It's not just me. Nobody wants to. What if the nervous system knows that at least on the level that it's operating belief-wise, that it knows cellularly I'm dying, not just physically, my intelligence is dying. And nobody knows what to do. Of course, they're not supposed to know what to do because they're supposed to die at that level. They're supposed to have no future. That is, no change. If you can change, you got a future. Think about some of the stories, if you want just something to do with it. All the great religious stories, mystical stories about guys that apparently started religions and they're threatened in, and sometimes what happened to them, and things that they said just before they bought the farm, or things they said a couple of days before the ultimate purchase of the farm. All the kind of things that took on, once it fell into city history, it's got all of these snowflakes and these icicles hanging on a tree that makes it sound like, well, the great source is just waiting. That you're going to pay this price, you're going to die, be a martyr. And that's really going to impress the gods. Well, since all of you went ahead and laughed when I pointed out, or tried to, and you thought you saw it yourself, of trying to tell the gods, well, here are my cigarettes. If I give these, you know, will you make me smarter and like I'll live forever? How about the other? All right, I'll die. I'll spit in the face of the king. Because if I do that, he'll kill me. And just when I spit, just before they kill me, I'm going to holler, hooray for the gods, and tooey on the king. If I do that, hey, boy, I bet you'll give me a big payoff after that, won't you? Can't you just see? The great God's going, wow. You mean this thing I made is going to spit in some other guy's face that I made, and he's going to kill him, and that was his prize. And one of the other guys might say, well, hey, that's nothing. I had a guy offer me a pack of cigarettes. So maybe that sucker paying to you, maybe that's a better deal on him. If you're not becoming more complex, if you're not growing, you got no future. It's that simple. You are in fact dead. We're going to stop because I want just a couple of minutes here on an epilogue after the public tape. So for you public people, bye. We back. All right, all I wanted to say was you people out of town and you people here, and somebody, Lynn, how about you be sure and put up a note, since we got so many people not here, to get me up a note for the next 2 or 3 or 4 meeting nights. I wanted to use, for you people out of town, send me, as soon as I start getting them in the next couple of weeks, send me any questions you got of a real practical everyday nature. And don't hesitate, because I'm not going to laugh at them, just because some of you may have been around for some length of time and you might still feel like you got some everyday problem dealing with somebody sexually, socially, some way. And don't hesitate now, because I want to spend a few weeks doing this. A few meetings, a few weeks, we'll see what it does. So do not hesitate and don't feel as though it's something that you should be past and that you don't want to write me a question. I'll take it as being a theoretical question, all right? But what I'm saying is I do not want you people out of town or here, don't ask one theoretically. I said I'd take it as being theoretical. But all I want some questions of having to do with just everyday stuff. Stuff that you still cannot deal with, that you really feel like that you should ask. That if I know anything, or that maybe I'll know something. I want you understand just everyday questions about how problems you seem to have in just living your life on a decent level out there in the city. Send them to me immediately, as soon as possible. And you people here the same way. And don't hesitate. You know this is not a contest. It's not a quiz. And I know that everybody could submit some question, because there are things that you still feel as though you cannot do properly. In some way you're still disturbed by the way that you seem to be operating in some specific ways in everyday affairs. Some weakness, some inability, something you don't seem to know, something that you just keep stepping in over and over and over and over. Just nice and simple, good old crude Bertrand Russell atomic sentences. Noun, verb, maybe an adjective. I don't know. Adjectives, I'll leave that between you and your God if you have got to throw in an adjective. But just get it down to the damn question and send it to me. Question mark at the end, you know. And I want to try to use some of them coming up very shortly. All right? And you people hear the same thing.